Joined now by our Friday insider, ESPN color analyst, and of course, the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. It is Mr. Ray Ferraro from Newark International. Is that right today?
Yes. Well, I didn't start here. I started at LaGuardia, and I was really pumped. Early flight, get out of there, get home by noon. There's a big fog thingamajiggy that's hit the East Coast here, and so flights are going nowhere out of Newark. So if I could even get to Toronto, they're going nowhere out of Toronto either. So now I'm on a 5:30 flight, which would be fine, except I got here in a car from LaGuardia to Newark at 9:30. So I'm working on 3.5 hours in this lounge. I've eaten more meatballs and I've gone through breakfast into lunch.
Well, we'll help you kill some time here.
Perfect.
Ray, what have you made of Elias Pettersson this year? He's coming off a 5-point night. We're asking on the poll question, can he finish top 10 in league scoring? But I'd love your observations on what you've seen out of Pettersson.
More than anything, to me, this looks like a return to the way he played that first year. Now, the goal last night was really slick, and it showed his hands and his athleticism. But what I mean in the first year was, I thought there was a little Pavel Datsyuk in him. Like when he didn't have the puck, he hounded it to get back, to get it back. And I think somewhere along the line, he lost a little bit of that. And the reason I bring up Datsyuk is I think he's one of the most complete players that I've ever seen play. Like I know Patrice Bergeron is kind of the gold standard for 200-foot centerman, but man, Datsyuk did it everywhere. He was just an amazing player, and the one thing like that he had were this ability to make people miss. Like they'd have him, there's nowhere to go, and he'd do something, make a move, a little edge work, a little spin. If people aren't familiar enough with Datsyuk, go back and just Google Pavel Datsyuk, Logan Couture. You just gotta watch one play, and that's what I saw from Pettersson. He worked hard to get the puck back, so when he got it, then he could use all his skill. And I'm seeing that again. And so what ends up happening in my viewing is that once you lose the puck, in the past couple of years, the play's dead for him, right? Like it's gone. You lose the puck. Well, now he gets it back. And because he's got it back, he's now put the other team on their heels because they're not ready for him to have the puck again. And so I think that to me, more than anything, is so noticeable in his game.
Were you amongst the group that thought this year could be a breakout year where he really stepped up in level vis-a-vis other NHL stars?
You know what? I like the way he finished last year, but I just, I don't know enough about him. Not that, I really know enough about anybody, but I didn't know enough if that was a springboard for him or if that was just, a really good finish of the year. And as it's turned out, it was a springboard. So he obviously had a really good summer. He was healthy. And there is a major difference between when you're splitting your workouts in the summer between working out and training and then doing rehab. Because if you're trying to split it between rehab and skill work and getting stronger, there's just not enough time. There's just, your body needs a break. And so this looks like a healthy, motivated player. And this is the Pettersson that I think everybody was super excited about when he first came here. And so I wouldn't say, Matt, that I thought, oh, this is going to be, a 90-point year for him. But the ability has been there to be a plus point a game player. And now if he's got a good springboard of health and training that gets him off to a good start, if he's got the tenacity to get the puck back like he does, that's going to extend his shifts in the offensive zone. It's going to give more opportunity with the puck. Like, why can't he be a plus point a game player?
Hey, Ray, it looks like Bo Horvat's trying to take a run at your 108 goal season from junior.
Don't pass.
I'm sure back in those days, you must have had stretches where you felt unstoppable. I have to imagine that's sort of, 3 straight 2-goal games for Bo Horvat. It's a fairly impressive accomplishment.
It is. The greatest part about it is you go to the rink when you catch a heater like this. You go to the rink and you don't hope to score. Like you just kind of know you're going to, which is just ridiculous in an NHL game. But I had limited runs like that. I think one time I had a 7 game streak where I scored 7 games in a row. And it was like, well, of course I'm going to score. And then you lose it and you're like, I'm never going to score. Like it's amazing how you can feel because right now he must think when the puck's on his stick that, well, obviously it's going to go in the net. Like he had the 2 last night, but he also got robbed. Was that in the
Yeah.
second period or the first
Yeah.
period?
No,
Like,
second.
yeah, it was an amazing save by Gibson. And so you're like, geez, he could have had another one. It seems right now, it seems like that he's putting himself into a position where the puck follows him. And so there's always good fortune when you score a bunch of games in a row, but the good fortune just doesn't happen by luck. You put yourself in the position to get good fortune. And that's kind of what I see with him. He's like, when he gets the puck, he's not standing on the boards. He's 15 feet in front of the net. It's like he's in the right spot and he's not missed very much.
They get away with a win against let's be honest, a dreadful Anaheim team. But it's a dangerous way to play, right? Like they beat Seattle 5-4. They outscored some problems that night. Martin Jones didn't make a lot of saves. You mentioned John Gibson and that save. There weren't a lot of John Gibson saves last night. But this team needs wins and traction, so they'll take the victory. But it's a dangerous way to play, giving up 5, thinking that you might score 8 on some nights.
It's an impossible way to be successful. As much as, look, I love offense as much as the next guy, but like right now, the Bruins are leading the NHL. They're scoring 4.5 goals a game. The one thing that they do as well is they don't give up very much. So there is a way to score without giving up a whole pile too. The one thing that I see with Vancouver, more so in transition, like with their defense, and I think it costs them a lot, is they get spread out wide, as opposed to whenever there's danger, they they need to be inside the dots, not outside the dots. And the dots they're really a great a great guideline for any player. Like I was always taught, use the dots when you don't have the puck as the boards. Like there's nobody scoring from outside the dots. If they do, that's somebody else's problem. Like that's the goalie's problem. And so I like even like if you look at the who was it, Strome, I think last night that scored with about a minute left in the second period.
Yeah.
Like that was, first of all, that was a rush that probably shouldn't have happened the way it did. But once it's there, the Canucks defense gets spread out. Not just the defenseman, the guys coming back, they're spread out. If you box into the middle a little tighter, give them room on the outside. And if you're able to change your defensive thought into that, you're going to give up a few less chances. A few less chances obviously mean less goals against. And that's one way you can tighten up a little bit without, just basically becoming an old flip the puck out team. Because that's not going to work either. In today's game, as we've seen, I don't know, I think 20 times this year, 2-goal leads are not very safe anymore.
Kuzmenko has an NHL hat trick. He's got more points than anyone amongst. He's not rookie Calder eligible, but he has more points than any other NHL rookie. How do you see things working here for this Russian winger?
No, well, first of all, he's totally entertaining to play or to watch. Like like he plays with an enthusiasm. I like the fact that he wants to score all the time. Like he's thinking offense. He's thinking aggressively all the time. Now, sure, you'd like a little, he'd like him to learn the balance a little bit, but I don't want to take that away. Those players are harder to find than somebody that can check. Like I've always felt, and certainly most recently, that, as we all chase around for the elusive 200-foot player, how about get a few guys that can play 100 feet, like they can play in the offensive end of the ice. And that's what I see with Kuzmenko. And maybe you've got to balance out the people around him a little bit because it's way harder to score than it is to defend. Way harder. It's not even close. So I like his game. I think his game will get better too, guys, because um, I think he will gradually and continually, he's already shown that you start to learn to attack north instead of east-west, because there's not a lot of room east and west across the ice. A great player to watch like that is probably one of my favorite guys in the league right now is David Pastrnak. And as much as Pastrnak will cut into the middle and hold it and go across the slot with the puck, he drives the net. Like, he goes north. And that, if you don't have that in your game, the defense can take that middle of the ice away from you, and you got nowhere to go. I think he's a good player. I mean, he's more mature, of course, than most rookies because of his age, but still got to learn the game over here. But that line look like they like playing together. They look like they're just willing to work for the next guy, and when you find that, it's pretty special.
Hey, Ray, you've referenced Boston a couple of times now. You worked the Bruins and the Rangers last night. So what are they doing? Like, what? They weren't supposed to be this good this early. Injuries to key players. Jim Montgomery comes in as a new head coach. They're 10-1. How are they doing it?
Well, Jeff, I had them both games this week. I had them Tuesday in Pittsburgh and now Thursday last night in New York. So pretty cool, I thought. Like, Jim Montgomery comes in and we were talking to him and he said, "Look, I didn't need to do anything with the defensive side of the puck. Bruce Cassidy already had that system here. He goes, so we just kept that system. And it's when we get the puck that we want to do things a little different." I'll tell you, I have never seen a Bruins team play this fast. And what's funny is they're all the same guys, but they're just they break up a play, and it is like everybody. It's not everybody, but it seems like everybody is racing up the ice. Hampus Lindholm is out of that zone like a rocket. Like, he has been amazing for them this season early on. So the change in the game is the attack off a really solid foundational defense. And the difference in their style, like, first shift of the game, they have a little reverse, like a high reverse. The forwards coming up by the blue line, and Lindholm takes it. Now he's in the forecheck behind the net. Like, that's not been the Bruins way, in the past. I'm telling you guys, I thought without Marchand, McAvoy, and Grzelcyk, if they could just hold their head, maybe they would be okay. Well, they haven't had McAvoy all year. They haven't had Krejci the last 3 games. Grzelcyk's just back, I think 5 or 6 games. They've won 6 in a row. They score 4.5 goals a game. Like, they are super impressive, and it also is pretty cool. Like, so they fire Bruce Cassidy. He goes to Vegas. I think Vegas is 8-2 now, and Jim Montgomery comes in, and they're 10-1. So maybe sometimes the message just does need to get changed, and because those are 2 really good coaches, and they're in really successful spots right now.
Vegas 10-2. They're tied with Boston, 20 points atop the NHL. They beat Ottawa last night.
Oh, sorry,
Cassidy.
I
absolutely. And you're right. Montgomery and Cassidy have done marvelous jobs there in their new abodes. Did you catch Kevin Bieksa's speech to the Canucks room last night?
Yeah.
And did you catch Boudreau in the aftermath of the game saying what he liked about it was that, Kevin talked about how you got to compete hard, even if you're not the best of friends. And the Kevin Bieksa I knew would stick up for all of his teammates, even if he didn't necessarily get along with a certain guy. I'm just wondering what you made of all that talk about, the internal compete, and how it's got to transcend even relationships in a room.
Well, I think, we've been around Vancouver, all of us, long enough, and you'd be hard pressed to meet 2 nicer people than the Sedins. And what those guys from that era will tell you is how hard they competed at practice, how hard their commitment was, or how deep their commitment was to team first. And so if you're like that, even if you don't think you're changing people's views, you are. Like, how is, I don't know, Alex Burrows, or pick somebody else off that team. How are they going to go, Mason Raymond? How are they going to go to practice and not work hard when they see Daniel and Henrik giving that commitment both on and off the ice? So a lot of times, like, we talk about leadership, like the guy's got to be this great orator and get up on a stump and make a speech. You lead by the way you play, by the way you work, by the way you're committed. And that Canucks team, I mean, they had, they didn't have They weren't all singing Kumbaya all the time, right? Like there was
Yeah.
a couple rocky spots in there, and yet they respected each other and they knew that they were good, and what a waste it would be to not work. And their leadership work their ass off. It doesn't mean that you've got to go there and nobody can have any fun or nobody can smile. No, you can for sure. But a, a great leadership group is a leadership group that shows the way. Now, I'm going to reference Boston again because, again, guys, it's just fresh information for me. But so Jim Montgomery told us that, and this relates right back to what Kevin was talking about. He said this year he saw something at camp the first day that he'd never seen before anywhere he's been. Was Cam Neely spoke, then Don Sweeney spoke, then Jim Montgomery spoke, and then Bergeron and Marchand spoke to the team about the way you treat each other, the way you work, the way you commit, the way the B, the Bruins crest is what's most important. And those guys learned that from Zdeno Chara. And so just think there is an identifiable culture about the Bruins. And the Canucks have lost that a little bit. And if you can build that belief inside from player to player to player, and then when this current group of players leaves, that the next group is learned from the leadership group here, and then it just it builds upon itself. That's where you build a culture. You don't build a culture in 3 weeks. You can start it, and you can have a right way to do things, but it starts with the top of your roster showing a way by their commitment, their effort, and their ability to lead this team. And I mean, look, Kevin was a just he's an emotional backbone spark plug player for them. And when they needed something to be done physically, he took care of a lot of it. But that leadership group wasn't 2 guys; it was about 8 guys, and that team was impressive in many ways. But that was one of the reasons.
Did you have on ice chemistry with guys that you didn't necessarily hang out with off the ice and whatnot? Does it have to extend beyond the ice surface, the dressing room?
No, it doesn't. Okay, like I never played with anybody on a line that I'm kind of cataloging through my lines here that I went, oh gee, I can't stand playing that, or I can't stand that guy. I never really had a guy like that. There were lots of guys that I never, like I was married, they were single, they were out, they were doing whatever they were doing. I was doing something different. I'd see them at the rink and then go home, but it didn't matter because on the ice, like I'm thinking of a guy like Benny Hogue in Buffalo, or came from Buffalo to New York. We were line mates for 3 years, and I had some of my best years with Benny. But he was much younger and was doing a lot of different things than I was doing, and I'm like, oh my god, I love playing with the guy. I didn't even need to look; I just knew where he was. So yeah, you don't have. I mean, it'd be great if everybody got along, but let's be honest here. I don't know why people are surprised if there's a story about not everybody gets along on a particular team. The Canucks in this case, because put 25 people together in an office, tell them they got to go to the same office every day and sit in the same room and do the same thing every day, and you think you're going to get 25 people to agree on everything or to get along? Come on, it's like, let's be honest, it's not going to happen.
Hey, Ray, we always talk about youth being served in the National Hockey League, and there is just this incredible influx of young players. But what about the fountain of youth? Erik Karlsson with 10 goals. Only McDavid has more than he does. And Jonathan Toews with 7 goals in Chicago. It took him 25 games last year to score his first after the year that he had stepped away. And Jonathan Toews with 7 goals in 11 games for the Chicago Blackhawks.
Well, I had heard that Taves showed up and at camp and was not in typical Jonathan Toews shape. He had to work his way back into shape. It was a little bit different for him. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, geez, he doesn't, he's kind of worn out from all the years and extra games and everything. But apparently not. Now, all of a sudden though, Jeff, like just think of this. If most of us felt that, if the Blackhawks they're going to get to the deadline and trade Kane and Taves, that there'd be a list of teams a mile long for Taves or for Kane, and nobody would be interested in Taves. Well, maybe that's going to change. Not on the Kane side. I think there'll be whoever can afford Kane and
right,
and is interested, and can fit that cap in. Well, there's going to be a whole group of teams that will look differently at Jonathan Toews because of the way he's playing. Because if he's got just like a half a step of quickness more, and he's got the joy back in his game, wouldn't that be an addition come March? I mean, like Chicago might end up with a haul here if this continues like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly a team to watch, an organization to watch, and because of all the.
I don't want to forget Erik Karlsson either, because I did not see this coming. Like, oh my gosh, this is like vintage Karlsson, like back in the day. Like that 10 goals. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's an amazing start for a team that's going to have a long year.
For a defenseman, yeah. You're at 10 goals.
Well,
before
somebody called them guys like that. They're like Dovers. They're like defense rovers. and I was like, I kind of like that, you know.
Well, great stuff. We're glad you were able to join after all today, and hopefully we've killed the better part of 30 minutes for you in the lounge. Have a great weekend, Ray. We'll catch up next Friday.
Well, thank you much. It looks like they've just refreshed the meatballs, so I'll be going.
There you go. Well, it certainly doesn't sound like there's a lack of cutlery behind you. So.
No, it's all working.